Hi everyone, my name is Liz I Read and welcome to another video, and today I am going to be recommending some fairy tale retellings. Almost all of these are YA retellings and I love a really good fairy tale retelling, whether it is a fantasy slant or just a contemporary slant, even sci-fi. I just always enjoy that experience, and I have some recommendations for you. Maybe you've heard of these before, maybe you have not, but let's just get into the recommendations. So the first one I feel like is a little cliche, and it's actually kind of technically new adult or even adult romance series, but that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is currently a 4-book series. Book 1 is specifically Beauty and the Beast retelling, and we follow Farah. Her family are in hard times. They have no money coming in, and so she hunts food for her and her family to provide for them. And one day she comes across a wolf, and she thinks to herself, is this really a wolf, or is it maybe a fairy? Either way, she decides to kill the poor wolf, but she does. She sells the hide and they use the meat, I think, and someone from the fairy world comes to claim her, life for life sort of thing. So she ends up going to the fairy world. She ends up living with Tamlin, who is, I think, like the leader of the spring court. And so it is their romance. It is a Beauty and Beast retelling, like I said, and so he is partly, he is covered with a mask, so he's not ugly, but he's a bit of a beast because I think he can transform into a wolf. I'm trying to remember, it's been a while since I read book 1, but he is kind of grumpy and a little bit beastly behavior. I really love this book. I love this entire series. The second book is Hades and Persephone retelling, and then book 3, I don't think it's a retelling, but the first 2 books are. Even having read all the books, I still really stand by book 1. I really enjoyed the first time I read it. I had a lot of fun, so I do definitely recommend it if you're looking for a retelling. The next one is Broken Wish by Julie C. Dow. This is not a retelling, but it is a fairy tale. It's written in that style. And in this one, it's kind of broken up into 2 parts. The first part, we follow a couple who's just moved to a small town and they don't really know anyone. And the wife is trying to make friends, basically. And she starts corresponding with the witch in the forest. And witches are kind of looked down upon in this small town. But she does it anyways because she's lonely and she doesn't have any friends. And so they kind of write back and forth and exchange gifts. And then eventually they do meet and they start having a friendship. We eventually learn that this couple can't have children. They're barren. And so the witch offers to help them use magic to help them have a child. And the wife really wants to have a child. And so she agrees, but there's a condition where they must continue being friends. After having gotten pregnant and everything, the husband convinces the wife to abandon her relationship with this witch. Flash forward a few years where their children are slightly grown. Some are still children, but some of them are teenagers and even adults. And we follow our main female character. Her name is Elva, and she's 16, and she learns that she has powers. She has magical abilities, but since witches are looked down upon, she hides her powers. But it is becoming more prominent in her life now that she's 16. I wouldn't call it a romance, but there's romantic plot line in this story. And since she's having these magical abilities, she seeks out the witch in the forest. Children are going missing. There's all these different kind of storylines coming together. And I will say this is a tragic story. So if you don't like tragic stories, maybe you don't read this. But I loved the twist at the end. I thought it was really well done and surprising. And I really liked Julie C. Dow's writing a lot. This is my first book of hers. But I'm looking forward to reading other books by this author. So I do recommend it. The next one I have is Just Ella by Margaret, Peterson, Haddix. This is a classic YA story, and this one is kind of answering the question, what happens to Cinderella after she meets her prince. And we follow Ella, and she's living at the palace with the prince. They're not married yet, but they're about to, and she's kind of adjusting to life as a princess and living that way. And she's starting to think that maybe she doesn't like this life. Maybe she doesn't want to be with the prince. Maybe she actually has feelings for someone else. This book was really surprising for me. I was just more surprised that I actually enjoyed it, because I didn't think I was going to, but I really did. I took a different turn or direction that I wasn't anticipating. She kind of takes life in her own hands, and I really liked that she decided to make her own choices. Even though she would have been taken care of at the palace, she decides that she doesn't really want that life. So I do recommend it if you want an interesting twist on Cinderella. The next one is Entwined by Heather Dixon. This is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. I really loved this story when I read it. It's quite a long one, but it's really well done. We follow Ahdieh. It's her and 11 other sisters, and sadly her mother passes, and the majority of the story is about her and her sisters grieving the loss of her mother, and they have a really estranged relationship with their father. And throughout their mourning period, because they have to go into mourning, to help them mourn the death of their mother, they turn to dancing. Their mother loved dancing, and she taught them how to dance. And our main female character, Ahdieh, she discovers a secret passage in the castle that they live in. And this passage leads to a magic pavilion that is available to them during the night. So every night they go down to the pavilion and they dance the night away. There's a mysterious man who watches over the pavilion, and the story is about them getting over the grief of their mother. It's about them rekindling a relationship with their father. There is a little bit of romance, and there's a bit of mystery because we don't know who this man is who is looking over the pavilion, and it does get really mysterious and a little freaky sometimes, but I really love this. It's a YA, I guess, fantasy you can say, but I just loved the family relationships in here and sisterly relationships, and the romance was really sweet and tender, and so definitely recommend this one. The next one is Neverland by Anna Catmore. I'm actually rereading it because when I was making these lists, I was reminded by this story and I remembered how much I loved it so much. So as you can probably tell, this is like a Peter Pan retelling. But this one we follow Angel, and she stumbles into Neverland. Like, she falls down at her house, and like she falls over a balcony of all things, but while she's falling, she never hits the ground. She ends up actually just falling through the sky of Neverland, and Peter Pan rescues her, and it's about her kind of discovering this world. She gets to know Peter Pan a bit, she gets to know the Lost Boys a little bit, and she meets some mermaids and stuff, but eventually Captain Hook captures her, and this romance is between her and Captain Hook, and I absolutely love it so much. It's so much fun. This is an indie YA, I guess, fantasy romance. It's really heavy on the romance, so if you're looking for a good Captain Hook romance, definitely recommend this one. The next one is Hunted by Meagan Spooner. This is another Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I really loved this one because our main female character is a huntress, and I don't know why, but I always love a good huntress story, and her family, again, are on hard times. They lost their fortune, and so in order to provide for her family, she has to hunt for food, and her father's also like a hunter, and so that's how she developed these skills. But one day her father goes missing, so she decides to hunt the beast that her father was tracking. You could probably guess the direction of this story. It's Beauty and the beast in this story is actually like a wolf, and he lives in a crumbling castle. And I really enjoyed this one. I don't know what it is about huntresses, but I do love a good huntress story. So definitely recommend another YA fantasy. The next one is Geekerella by Ashely Poston. This is a contemporary YA, but it's a Cinderella story. And this has like a geek nerdy twist where our Cinderella, I think her name is just Elle, she is a huge Starfield fan. And Starfield's kind of like Star Wars or Star Trek or something like it, or Battlestar Galactica. Her father is actually the creator of the con for this specific TV show, but sadly her father is obviously passed because it's a Cinderella story. But they announced the actor who's going to play a character of the new movie Starfield, and she's really upset by the choice. It's like a teen actor, and she doesn't understand why they chose this character. Anyways, you can follow the steps of Cinderella. The big ball is like a con ball. So there is some kind of cosplaying in this story, and there's a mix of like You've Got Mail, because she actually corresponds with the teen actor. I really loved it when I read this. I love a good YA contemporary story or romance, and so this is a really good choice as well. Another YA contemporary romance and another Cinderella contemporary romance is Cinderella by Robin Palmer. This leans more like younger YA or closer to even like middle grade, but I remember really enjoying it. This is like set in LA, and it leans a lot more traditional, I guess, Cinderella. It kind of reminds me of like a Cinderella story with Hilary Duff. So if you like that movie, you'll probably like this story as well. But it's set in LA, and she actually writes like to the newspaper of her school how she hates prom and she doesn't like anything to do with it, and she becomes kind of like a social outcast because of that letter. But then I think she gets to know like the teen boy who is like the prince of this story, but she still has like an evil stepmother and evil stepsisters who are just obsessed about prom, and it's about her kind of falling in love. If you want another Cinderella retelling that is contemporary, this is your option. The next one I have is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This is a Queen of Hearts origin story, so it's not really a retelling, but it's definitely like an origin story. And you definitely get all the Alice in Wonderland feels in this story, but we follow Catherine, and she is a baker, and all she wants is to bake, and she wants to open a bakery with her maid, but they're like really close friends. That's her dream. That's all she wants. Unfortunately, the king has his eyes on her and wants to marry her, but that's not really the life she wants. And she doesn't really know how to tell her parents that she doesn't want that she just wants to like bake cakes her entire life. In comes Jess, who is the court joker. He does like magical stunts and stuff, and it is their romance. And things happen. This is a tragedy, another one. When I first read this, I did not know it was a tragedy. I don't know why. I didn't connect that this was like Queen of Hearts origin story, but it ends with her becoming the Queen of Hearts, like the ruthless queen. Just know that going in, like it's not like it's a romance, but it's not. It's a tragedy, so know that going in, but I absolutely loved it. It's such a good story, so if you don't mind a good tragic story, tragic ending, maybe try this one. Second to last, I have The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Attier. This is a duology, but my favorite out of the two is book one. It's so good. This is a 1001 Arabian Nights retelling. The king is a ruthless king. He takes a new wife every night and kills them off the next morning, unfortunately. And so he's a ruthless monster. And then our female character, she decides to volunteer because the previous queen that he killed was her best friend. And she decides to not really sacrifice herself, but she decides to get even with the king and maybe try to stop him. And so she volunteers to be the next queen, to marry him, and obviously he's really intrigued that someone would be willing to do that because he's known for killing his wives. And so she volunteers, they get married, and then every night, to prevent her death, she tells a story and intrigues him further and further. And this story is so good. It's really angsty, and you really feel for these characters, and you're surprised because the king is ruthless. But it's such a good story, a really great retelling. If you like a good romance, I definitely recommend it. And the last one I'm going to recommend, which I can't believe I forgot, is another Cinderella retelling, but it's Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and this is a sci-fi series. I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but this is kind of like space opera, really. But this is a Cinderella retelling, and each book in the series is a different retelling. So book 2 is like a Red Riding Hood retelling. The third one, I think, is Rapunzel, and the last one is Snow White. With Cinder, we follow Cinder, who is our Cinderella character, and she's a cyborg, and she gets swept up into the politics of this world. There's like an evil queen who wants to take over the nation that she lives in, and she falls for the prince, they somehow meet and there's some connection there. And so it's really good. It's a lot of fun. If you like space stuff, you'll probably like this. If you like a good retelling, I definitely recommend this. So those are all my fairy tale retellings. I would love to know if you've read any of these books before. Please comment down below if you have. If you have any fairy tale retelling recommendations, please leave them down below for other people to see, and maybe I can pick them up as well. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you have not done so. You can follow me on Goodreads and Instagram, and you know what? I want you to keep reading. Bye.